with the board, and then we'll open it up for discussion with some parameters.
Thank you, Chairman Taylor. My name, of course, is P.J. Jennings with the Woodbury County Attorney's Office. I just briefly wanted to give the board a heads up to an agenda item that we're going to be putting on the agenda for September 6th, which is right after the holiday. And that's essentially, for fine collections purposes, we're going to be asking that we hire another body so that we can perform that work. When we started this process, first of all, the process is to make victims whole for their restitution needs for criminal activities. I believe we satisfied those needs, made the county a little money in the process. This last fiscal year, I believe we collected over $500,000 total. Of that, the county gets 40% of the proceeds, so a little over $200,000 came to the county. So we met our threshold, essentially, which we didn't think we were going to be able to do for at least another 6 to 8 months out. But we did that earlier than we thought. Since then, the laws have changed, been enacted in July. The percentages that come to the county has gone down. It's decreased from 40% to 28%. The threshold has gone up from $400,000 to $600,000. And there's been other requirements on us. In the past, we only had to collect the minimum amount of dollars, I believe $25,000. Now, if we don't collect that $600,000, we go into a probationary period. And if we don't collect it that next year, we're out of the program. A lot of people will be hurt. We talk about jail overcrowding. We are allowing people to have their licenses back, which allows them to drive legally and not get arrested, go to the jail, get extra costs charged on them, and it's just a cycle. We help those folks. We help the community. Again, victim restitution comes off the top. The county sees none of that money. The state sees none of that money, which is, again, the purpose of why we're in existence to begin with. So when I come back in September, we're going to be showing the county, we're going to present to you guys a spreadsheet which shows the dollars that we've collected. We're hoping to also give you a flavor of the dollars that you guys don't see that we also collect, such as room and board that we collect, surcharges that we collect, other city fines that we collect, monies that the county doesn't see that far exceeds that $500,000 that the county can see. We're hoping to show you all of those numbers, show you why we're worthy of that new hire, because we have to meet these needs, as well as our benefit to the community. It's our hope that we're going to cover our costs. Everything that we do, we're going to cover our costs, including the cost of the new employee. And that should show our worth to the community. If the county makes some money over top of that, so be it. But we're not a money-making function. We're here to make victims whole. And so that's our purpose, and I hope to show you that come September.
Thank you very much, and I just wanted to ask PJ to address the board because we were talking between our budget analyst and PJ as far as some of the numbers and reconciling those over the next 2 or 3 weeks. And just to give a preview that we hope to gain some revenue, but we also want to balance victims' restitution and so on.
Correct.
And so I think we can get there, and look forward to seeing you back.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we begin further citizen concerns, just want to lay out a couple of parameters. I received some emails that there would be plenty of concerns on a minimum wage task force tonight, from Chris Hull to quite a large group, and as well as from Rick Scott. Just to reiterate a couple of things, we'll allow up to 3 minutes. We'll allow everyone to speak. We'll start off those who would be proponents of having such a task force, and I'll introduce that way. And then after those who have spoken as proponents, up to 3 minutes each, we'll take anyone who would want to share a contrasting point of view, and then any board of supervisors as well. So with that, Mr. Sturgeon, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, most of you probably saw the United Way study that came out a few weeks ago, and it was very disconcerting. It showed that 15% of the people of our county live under the poverty level. It showed that 4 out of 10 people in this county are barely making ends meet, struggling with the basic necessities: food, clothing, shelter, child care, transportation. The same study also pointed to some of the reasons for that, and it was obvious, well, one of the main reasons is low wages. We can do something about that. We can increase the minimum wage in Woodbury County to help these 4 out of 10 of our citizens have a better chance at making a living. It's not a panacea, but it's one tangible thing we can do to help push these people out of poverty. We can't wait any longer for the state or federal government to do it. They're not going to do it. They haven't done it. And other counties in Iowa have thought enough about their citizens to take action on their own. Johnson County's passed a minimum wage. It'll go up to $10.15. Polk County just passed an increase in the minimum wage. It'll go up to $10.70 over 3 years. Lynn County is proposing increases in the minimum wage that will go over $10.50. But we have an even more important concern here because we've got neighboring states that have higher minimum wages than us. We're competing with South Dakota that has a minimum wage of $8.55 and Nebraska at $9 an hour. Minimum wage should not be a starvation wage. It should be a wage where people can make a living. If we don't do something to boost these wages to get people self-sufficient, we pay on the back end. We pay on the back end through food stamps, subsidized housing, subsidized child care, and energy assistance. Basically what I'm asking this board to do is to reconsider the Smith proposal that would appoint a citizens task force of community leaders, labor leaders, educators, and business leaders to get together for the benefit of this community and talk about a minimum wage that would be appropriate for our community. This issue is important. This is 4 out of 10 of our citizens, and it deserves at least a fair hearing. So we are asking you to place this matter on next week's agenda with an open forum so that the people of this community can have a chance to address this. We also have over 400 signatures here of petitions. But when I see counties like Polk County, Johnson County, and Lynn County, when I see the responses of their supervisors, they're proud of what they're doing for the citizens of their community. They're proud of the fact that they can do something tangible in their local community to help these people who desperately need our help. So my question to you is, as I give you these petitions, is why not Woodbury?
Thank you very much, Mr. Spurgeon. Would you like to hand this to us and we'll make sure that we all have copies?
At the end of the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Would anybody else like to address the board on this particular topic?
Sure. Trying to sit up tall for the mic. Can you still see me, Jeremy? Huh? Perfect. Well, I'm coming today just as a concerned citizen. I've gotten to know most all of you.
Sorry, Mr. Glenn, if you'd state your name and your address for the record.
I got you. Thanks. Is that okay? Does it work? Alex Waters, 3006th Avenue, Sioux City, Iowa. Thanks. Like I was saying, I'm coming tonight just as a concerned citizen. I think this is an issue that we need to address. I've come to know just about all of you pretty well, and I know that you care a lot about the people of Woodbury County. It's something that I respect about all of you. I know that you care about workforce. I know that you care about bolstering the economy, about quality of life, about things like that. And I think that the minimum wage addresses each of these. It has an impact on that. And as Al just pointed out, we're at a comparative disadvantage with our position here in the state. We have to address that. We have to understand that with Nebraska and South Dakota having a higher minimum wage and with plans to increase it further, we need to take action. Now, the state of Iowa is not an initiative state. It's not something that we can put on the ballot, and I understand that. Because one thing I understand that all of you have addressed, and I know there are concerns, is that it's something that should be happening at the federal or the state level. And I agree with you. I want that to happen. But the fact is it hasn't. It's been brought up twice, and it has failed in the state of Iowa. And with our positioning in the state, we need to make sure that we are not losing to that comparative advantage. We need to address these issues. These are things that we need to and can do on a county level, as we have seen across the state of Iowa. Finally, I really am not asking you to raise the minimum wage. I think that sometimes the issue gets muddled in here. I think there are a lot of reasons to raise the minimum wage. I'm not asking you as a board to do that. We are not doing that. We're asking you to develop a task force to look into this and see if it's right for Woodbury County and what that situation would look like. That's what we're asking. We crunched some of the numbers, and I was looking into it and thinking about it. And it came out that a person working minimum wage would have to work 100 hours a week just to make the wage that you all make as county supervisors. 100 hours a week just to do what you all do. I think that we're lucky. A lot of us here in this room probably don't make minimum wage. We aren't doing that. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't fight for them. we shouldn't at least look into these rights and see how it is affecting them and how, as Al put it, that we can really affect them. Counties across the state are doing this, and I agree with Al. Why not Woodbury? Why not now?
Thank
Thanks.
you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak for this item under citizen concerns?
Yeah, Tom Vaneski, 2867 Grace Court up here in Sioux City. You know, just listen to what I'm hearing on the news and everything that's going on. There definitely does need to be something looked into, guys, because I'm making a little above minimum wage. I can't support a family of 4 on that little bit. You got people working 2, 3, 4 jobs just to make ends meet for 7-something an hour, maybe 8 an hour. We got to kick that up. We got to look into doing this. If all the other counties in the state are doing it, if other states around us are doing it, then they're even talking here and there with some of the presidential candidates about raising the wage. It needs to be looked into. It really does. Because we are good people here in Iowa. I moved here from the state of Maryland, and I like it out here. It's quiet. It's beautiful country. But you got to make ends meet. You got to make things where people can live and buy their food and take care of their families. And a lower wage, being the minimum, is not enough. It's just not enough. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Others who would like to address the board as a proponent of this issue?
I'm Bruce Lear, 3531 Idlewood Street. I'm used to talking to another group of people, so it's a great opportunity to talk to you today. I trust the government closest to the people. That's you. I trust that you can form a task force with small business, with government leaders, with citizens, and discuss this. I'm not so sure why we're afraid of that. If we are, we shouldn't be. An open discussion about this issue is something that's timely, something that's needed. I don't think anyone is standing here saying what the minimum wage should be, because to go from 7-something an hour to 15 might not be reasonable for Woodbury County, but it might be something that can be discussed on a gradual kind of level. I have confidence that we can do this after all the voices are heard, but I'm also confident that if we don't do this kind of thing, people are going to suffer. And I represent a lot of teachers who have a lot of children whose parents are making minimum wage. It's a myth to say that it's teenagers who are making minimum wage. That's just not true. It's adults who are trying to make their way. So I would just suggest that we study it and we spend some time listening, and then we form a reasonable opinion. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Others who would like to address the board on this issue?
How are you today?
Good. How are you?
My name's Dustin Rule. I live at 1130 South Irene. The reason why I'm down here, I make above minimum wage, but I have a family of 5. And my problem is off my salary, which is way higher than minimum wage, I can barely afford my rent, I can barely afford my car payment, and I can barely afford food. And I also have food stamps to support my family. Off my wages, I'm struggling. So if somebody off of minimum wage is struggling and I'm struggling, there's something that we as a community should be able to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Siobhan Ryder, and I live at 2931 Nebraska. Just real quick on that, I worked at MCI, and best job I ever had. Started out at $7 an hour, but I made commission, so it didn't matter what my hourly wage was. I didn't care. And I never dreamed those days would be over. Never dreamt it. It was the easiest money I ever made in my life. I grew up on a farm. Heck of a lot easier to work at MCI than it was doing that. So, and then proceeded on to go to Gateway and made a little bit more money, and I never had a college degree and barely had 5 years sales experience, but that was what it was. And I never dreamed those days would be over. And when I got done there, I went and made $8 an hour, just like he did. I couldn't make it. I could barely live. I didn't know what I was going to do. I called my mom one day and said, can you just buy me $30 worth of groceries? Because, I don't get paid till Friday, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And I never asked her for anything ever before, because in my family, because I grew up on a farm, you work for your money. Well, I work for my money. I'm working for my money, but I can't find a job because I can't do physical labor like some men can do. I know how to do it, but I'm not good at it. So she came over and she said, I want to see your paycheck stubs and I want to see your bills. What about your car insurance? I go, car insurance? My God, I haven't had car insurance in 6 months. Can't even afford to eat. We're not eating. So if she goes, well, what happens if you go to jail? I go, well, I'll tell them I get a free room and board because we're not eating. And so I honestly didn't care if I had car insurance. I dropped all my bills, everything except for my rent and food for my kid. And my car was paid for, and we could barely make it. So she said, quit your job. I was better off not working than I was working. And she said, and I'll pay your car insurance. So I went back to school. But it took me a little bit to get ready to do that. I was better off not working than I was working. That's not right. Something needs to change. And is it right? $15 an hour, is that the answer? Well, it's a good start, but it's not completely the answer. Because if you think about businesses here in Sioux City and how they started, like Popcorn Smith, they didn't start out. Those guys that drove that corn to town to start that business, you didn't pay those guys, because I know them. My family helped them. They all helped each other. People helped each other. So something needs to change, and I'm not saying 100% that it's $15 an hour, but something needs to change in that area, but not just in that area, in a lot of areas. Sioux City's struggling. I'm making a little bit more than $8 an hour right now, but not very much, and I've cut my expenses down to nothing, so we could make it. I don't know. So.
Thank you very much. Anyone else who would like to speak in favor of action? Anyone who would like to?
Just like to present the petitions.
Sure.
Everybody's had an opportunity to speak.
Make sure everyone has had an opportunity. Sir.
I move to receive the petition.
I think we may have one more. And
Sorry,
then
John.
John Hamm. I live at 109 West Gilman Terrace in Sioux City. Been a Woodbury County resident all my life. And I've been a labor person all my life. And I have to tell you, minimum wage really isn't a labor issue because our people make more money. But we've always stood behind increasing the minimum wage for people, because no matter who you are, if you go out and you put in a good day's work, you deserve to get a decent day's pay for it. That's all there is to it. And I don't know about everybody else here, but they should be getting tired of corporate welfare, because if people don't make a decent wage, they're drawing welfare. And who are we supporting? We're supporting businesses like Walmart and stuff that are multi-billion-dollar corporations that the people that do make a decent wage are paying tax dollars to support these people that are not making a decent wage. So really, this is an issue of what's right and what's wrong, and what's right is to look into doing something about the minimum wage around here. Thank you.
thank you very much, Mr. Hamm. Did you have a motion, Supervisor Smith, that you wanted to make to receive? I'll second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much. Appreciate the dialogue. I appreciate the respectful manner and the ability to approach and have this dialogue. If there's anybody on the board that would like to respond, this is not an agenda item to be debated, but in fairness, if anybody would like to respond, you may do so, and then we will begin our meeting with item 4.
Well, I think it probably should be put on the agenda next week for a vote on up or down again. And we can see if anybody's changed their mind. So that's my request, is to put it on the agenda next week.
Anybody else who would like to respond to the comments?
Is that a motion? Can he motion that? Make a motion to that effect?
There's already been a vote on this issue. So,
But clearly, we
I know
have a
we-
room full of
Right.
citizens that are asking us just to talk about the issues. So my question now is, can we make a motion to put it on the agenda for action next week?
I think under the bylaws of the board, at this point, yes, you could make a motion that it would be a ministerial sort of thing. And it's really up to the desire of the board as far as how they want to proceed.
So I would respond and just give you some perspective. We did have this on the agenda. We did have a fairly extensive discussion on this item. We did visit this. The majority of the board chose not to move forward with it. And so it has been decided by the majority of the board. Nothing in here precludes, and we made this very clear, Supervisor Smith had asked the county attorney's office if it was okay to go ahead and use county resources in order to study the issue. I was told it would not be appropriate if it's not the majority of the board's will. However, that doesn't preclude anyone from gathering any kind of data outside of having a task force. My response would be, in part, this. Typically, you convene a task force because you have the presupposition that something's a good idea. Otherwise, I can see the frustration right now in convening a task force, having a recommendation back, and then asking the question, well, why didn't you take that recommendation? It is my opinion that it's not the role of county government to set the minimum wage. I see a whole host of problems with it. I think problems right now that the 3 counties are wrestling with. We heard the majority of counties, or all counties, I think one person said 3 out of 99 are wrestling with exempting 16 and 17-year-olds. They're wrestling with tipped restaurant workers, and not to mention the fact that each city can exempt itself. And so my encouragement in part would be to approach the city of Sioux City. In our 9 meetings out in rural areas, not one time has this been brought up to any rural city councils. Not one time have I heard this group of organized activists in front of the city council. I would encourage that, because at least then we would know some of the problems that may happen. So to me, it's a philosophical bridge too far. It'd be like convening a task force to privatize courthouse security. I wouldn't be on that in line with that. So to convene a task force to take those positions away from unionized law enforcement isn't something that I would do. And so I think it would be disingenuous of us to convene that task force and know that the majority of the board, unless that changes, believes that that's a good policy for a county to set a minimum wage.
Mr. Chairman, you mentioned some unintended consequences, and I just wanted to bring up a Sioux City Journal published a Associated Press article this month related to discussion of Polk County minimum wage to head to cities. You mentioned sometimes that decision gets punted back to the cities, and just to read an excerpt, Iowa League of Cities Executive Director Alan Kemp says possible wage increases in several counties are causing a new kind of tension for city-county relationships. I think a task force sets us down this path of discord, where we have to decide whether we're going to grant waivers or whether it's going to be mandatory before we discuss the merits, which, as you said, Mr. Chairman, we've already done. And I've also noticed the 9 or so meetings we've had out in the rural area, we have had a lot of organic discussion that has led to actionable material at board meetings, but not once has this issue been brought up. And that's what I'm struggling with is whether this is an organic issue or whether it's not. The rising tide that lifts all boats, to me, is not the minimum wage. It's job growth. It's tax relief and competition. That is the competitive advantage that this county has sought to go after, and I think that's what we're going to continue to do.
I would like to say one thing. I would think the task force, you would include members of the city council on that. So when it came to the time to make a recommendation, there wouldn't be any animosity, that would all be fleshed out. And if the citizens ultimately don't want the minimum wage raise, they don't think it's good for the county, so be it. But this is process. This is government at its very purest. As far as the county meetings, we set the agendas for the county meetings. I'm sure there would have been plenty of discussion on the minimum wage had that ended up on an agenda item. It wasn't. When we go out, we ask them, what are you up to? Well, they're obviously not up to raising the minimum wage. So the fact that we haven't heard it really means nothing. So I don't know where all the members are at. I can kind of guess where 2 are. Maybe 1 has changed their mind. I'm not sure. But we have never had, except for maybe 1 other time, this many people in our room. And, I want to say the Des Moines did a poll. If you want to break it down along party lines, 95% of Democrats support raising it, 65% of Republicans. So it's pretty widespread. If it was left up to the legislatures in South Dakota and Nebraska, they probably wouldn't have tackled it either. It was the people that wanted it. And this is the only way the people can get it in this county is for us to take it up. I'm done.
Takes a single parent with 2 kids to make $35,000 a year to make it even. That's $30 an hour. $15 doesn't cut it. I agree with everything you've said about minimum wage. We need to address minimum wage, but I agree with Mr. Clausen, who was on tape, saying, I don't think it belongs in county government. It really doesn't belong in county government. Form a task force. Doesn't have to be the county task force. Go for it. I'd be happy to be even involved in that. But it doesn't fit into county government, from my perspective.
Well, I don't know what.
We're still under citizens' concerns, correct?
We closed the period of public comment.
Citizens' concerns, correct? We have not moved down to number 4, approval of agenda.
We closed the public comment on this. As I said from the very beginning that we would do, this isn't an agenda item that's been published. And therefore I wanted to give and not cut anybody off and ask anybody to speak. But what I didn't want to get into is something, and Joshua, you correct me if I'm wrong, because I didn't want to get into something that's not published on the agenda that we're deliberating on back and forth. Now we have a potential motion. If it's not on an agenda for people to know, people who may have otherwise come as proponents, maybe this room would be twice the size, or opponents don't have a fair opportunity. But you correct me if I'm wrong, because I will yield to whatever advice you give us.
Right, and we don't want to cross into deliberation because it's not on the agenda as an action item. I was looking at the bylaws here, and rather than a formal motion, basically at this point it would be a consensus of the board as to whether to put it back on or not. So you wouldn't take a formal vote on this, but it would be, if there's a majority of the board that wants to go forward with it, then it should go on next week. If not, then it won't, basically.
I'll let Supervisor Clausen respond, even though the intention was going to be, and then after that, if there's that consensus, the majority always rules. It did on the, I hate to bring it back up, but the county manager, I went down on that issue 1-4. The majority always rules, and I know you were happy about that, on any issue, and so the majority will today, if that's the majority's rule, I'll put it on the agenda as chairman for next week. Supervisor Clausen, you will have the last word.
Well, thank you. Mark, I don't know where that quote came from. But
I have it
can
on
live-
tape, Larry.
I can live with it. The thing is, what the people are asking for is just a study. They're not asking to pass a minimum wage increase. They just want the people in this community, the people that are, they look to make a decision that what is wrong with studying it. It doesn't force you to vote for whatever they come up with, or maybe you'd like what they come up with. But we all might learn something if there was a study of this issue. And that's my final word on it. And if you're looking for where I'm at, I think we should, a consensus, I think we should do it.
And to hold to my word, Mr. Clausen will have the final word. Now, I would just ask if I can informally poll to see if there's consensus to move forward. And the question that I'm asking, just so everyone's clear, is this an item that you would like to have placed on the agenda for next week for action in order to move forward with a county commissioned task force in order to study the issue and come back with a recommendation?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
And my personal vote would be no as well. With that, I would ask approval of the agenda dated August 16, 2016.
Move it.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no, and the motion carries 5-0.
Mr. Chairman, were there any other citizens concerned other than this issue? I think you've gone by it.
Mr. Clausen points out an error that I made, which was any other citizen concerns that were not on this issue, either for or against. We don't want to bypass anyone in that process. Hearing none, we will go to item 5, which is approval of the minutes of the August 9th, 2016 meeting.
Move it.
I'll second. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no, and the motion carries 5-0. Also, approval of the minutes of the August 4th, 2016. That was a special meeting.
Move it.
I'll second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no, and those minutes are approved 5-0. Item
Ask me about
6.
a road. Did you ask me about a road yesterday? No, that was Denny. Denny, okay.
Item 6 is discussion and approval of the claims.
Move it.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the claims? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no, and the motion carries 5-0. Item 7 is a presentation of resolution thanking and commending Rosemary Journey for her years of service in Woodbury County. If you'd please come forward, Rosemary. Rosemary Journey has worked with the Red Cross. If you just come up to the podium, I'm going to say a few nice things about you on your way up. I met Rosemary because 2 different times when I was in training, my wife was in labor, and we actually had 2 children, and Rosemary was the one who called. And I just want to say, when you're in stress and you're in crisis and your family's there and your daughter's at home trying to work all this out, it's really important who's on the other end of the phone and advocating. And I just want to let you know this isn't just a personal thing. For me, it's seeing her work up front. And so I'm going to read this, and I just want you to understand the magnitude of what this individual does. And this is signed by our entire board. It says, Rosemary Journey, for your service to Woodbury County. Whereas Rosemary Journey's demonstrated herself to be an outstanding citizen of Woodbury County by volunteering with the Siouxland Area Chapter of the American Red Cross, serving 13 counties in northwest Iowa, Nebraska, and South Dakota. And whereas Rosemary has dedicated herself as a volunteer for the American Red Cross and military support for 40 years, dedicating her time day or night as a critical link between U.S. military families and their deployed loved ones by making informed decisions in a timely and verifiable manner with approximately, and I want you to hear this, 300 messages on a yearly basis. It's almost every day that she's getting a call. Whereas she also goes above and beyond her duties, visiting returning veterans that are hospitalized, attending military funerals, welcoming them home after their tour of duty, offering hours of support and resources to military families, or simply holding a hand of someone in their time of need. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Supervisors of Woodbury County, Iowa, that the undersigned members of this board thank and commend Rosemary Journey for her years of service to Woodbury County, and be it further resolved that it's the wish of all those signing below that the future hold only the best for this very deserving person, Rosemary Journey. And I also wanted to include, on behalf of the board, flowers for your husband, Colonel Journey, who passed away this past year. And thank you for all that you've done and continue to do. Give you a hug. Okay, thanks so much. Thank you. The next item, transitioning from there, is to recess the Board of Supervisors meeting and convene the Bennett McDonald Smith.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Excuse me.
For which items?
Number 7 says motion and second to receive the signatures for the resolution.
This is just the information.
But that doesn't have to be a motion, sir.
No, I think we can dispense with that. Yes, thank you. This is to recess the Board of Supervisors meeting and to convene the Bennett McDonald Smithland Drainage District Trustee meeting. And so we will do so with an update on the Bennett McDonald Smithland Drainage District work in consideration of contract extension with project consultant. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this item? Thank you very much. This is our County Engineer, Mark Nara.
County Engineer Mark Nara and Craig Beadle from B&K. Craig has been working on this for a little over 10 months. We've had a series of inspection reports rating the condition of the Bennett McDonald Smithland levee system as what Corps of Engineers classifies as unacceptable. Some of the major problems with it are encroachments of farm ground upon the area that is confined to the levee, the growth of trees and undesirable plants into that profile of the levee, and the county has been directed by Corps to bring the levee into compliance and to take action on those issues. Can you bring up the map on the TV screen that was in the backup? Okay. She doesn't have it on the computer, it's just on. If you've seen the map there are critical areas that show up on the map in, I guess it's in orange. I don't know. I tried to scan this in color, but yeah, you've got it there. But the areas that are in orange are the areas where we don't have a recorded easement of the property that's within the levee. This was constructed back in '64. We found nothing in the county records. Corps records are also lacking. And these areas happen to be within the areas that have some of the most heavy encroachments into the profile of the levee, up on Persingers being one. There's trees directed to be removed in McCall's, which is the center one down there, and then along the Calducks farm, which is on the south and west portion of this. We had a conference call with Corps of Engineers last week to discuss how to deal with these areas where we don't have an easement. We've also looked at the easements that we do have, and some of them, the easement area is much larger than what the county has needed, about 50 feet.
At least. In places, it's way into their farm fields. And one discussing this with the Corps, they are only looking to get people off the dikes, off the levees, and they acknowledge that the easements that they put down in the 60s, the dikes didn't end up where they were supposed to. So their suggestion was to go back through can run along the existing dikes and get an extra 15 feet if possible, vacating the existing easements that are there so that we don't go in there and plow down 50 feet of corn that the guys already got there. It's obvious that that wasn't the intent, but to go back and actually try to follow the intent of the levies as they do exist right now.
We do have it back up on the screen now behind you. So the areas in question would be the areas that are colored in orange. We've worked extensively with Mr. McCall. Those board members who were around for the prior two projects that we've done in that area all know how concerned he is with the health and condition of that levee. We don't anticipate a problem there, although his is one area where some ground might be able to be given back. But that orange area there, next to the 1107-206 easement that is recorded, it would be at the lower left of the screen, as Craig said right now. Those trees there that you see in that valley, there's a culvert that comes through the levee there, are some of those that are growing in there. The problem with this is you get the tree roots growing down in the levee and they ruin the integrity of that compacted dike. It creates a weak spot in the levee where you can end up with a failure. And being on the Smithland side, this is an area where potential for failure is critical. One of the other areas, if you look up the north and east side of the town of Smithland, you see the sewage lagoons near the upper left-hand corner of the screen. You see in yellow around the town. There's also a levee up there. What was found in the survey is that nothing was recorded, and it isn't the plat shown in the plans doesn't even close properly. In other words, nothing lines up. It doesn't fit the area where the dike actually is. It's very difficult for us to go in, tell the farmer that you don't have a right to farm here unless we can pin down exactly the ground that the county and the Corps are supposed to be managing in this case.
Aren't there some serious issues north of the bridge?
That's another topic for a different day.
Okay.
Right now, we're trying to take care of the more minor things that would allow us at least to bring the left bank into compliance. The right bank north of the bridge is a whole different and very expensive discussion. And you can see that purple, we do have a recorded easement there, so we do know what we own there. That is an area where we can deal with farmland encroachments. But getting back to the other ones, you can see the pink one there that is on, what's the name of that landowner? I can't think of his name. Mort Horse. That's the one where we're better than 50 feet out into a cultivated cornfield farther than we have to be. There could be a vacation plat run there and allow him to farm the ground that he owns. The footprint of the easement was much greater than what is needed to manage the levee system in that area. I know you didn't have a chance to examine the proposal, but the contract is basically the same as the county attorney and the board have looked at before. The change for this extension of the contract is to go in and plat the easements that we actually need. That would include some vacation easements, giving background that we don't need. That would include getting easements and negotiating with the property owners that we don't have record of at this point in time. So call ducks, McCall, and Persinger.
Do we know,
And then the folks up in Smithland.
do we know what the approximate cost will be?
Yes. I didn't have time. We didn't have a chance to get this drafted after our meeting. It's a not to exceed hourly rates up to $13,460. I mean, it is some pretty extensive work to go through, do the platting, and it would be based on hourly billing for the amount of time that he actually spends doing the work.
The Corps' requested we go back now and reshoot all of the existing dike system as it exists, and then make the new plats based off of that.
He found roughly a 25-foot error at the south end in what was recorded easement versus what it was actually built to. there are
And that'll be spread out over how many individuals?
That's
One levy to get,
properties.
14 different properties.
but they're not going to see any change.
More than likely,
Right.
we'll actually gain some ground back.
Okay.
In most cases.
I mean, I just always want to make sure that we're keeping in mind if questioned in the future, you know, what has that gained for us, just to be accountable.
Right.
Yeah, the Corps is demanding that you bring it into compliance.
Okay.
The Board of Supervisors in 64 signed an agreement that they would maintain this levy once it was constructed by the Corps. So they are now holding us to that agreement. And they have determined multiple times that our levy is in unacceptable condition.
Would it be accurate to say we have no choice but to?
Yes.
I mean, that's,
Come down to it, yeah.
okay.
You gotta keep getting the letter.
We have some physical issues as well that Mark alluded to with the left bank north of the bridge. Again, that discussion is for another day. At least we can take care of the levee portions that are healthy and perhaps get the left bank out of the the right bank out of the unacceptable condition. And the right bank is what actually protects the town, which is where I think we need to be focusing our initial efforts. Then we need to start looking at how we're going to deal with that left bank.
Supervisor Clausen?
Yeah, you gotta quit saying left and right. It depends whether you're looking
Face
upstream or downstream.
downstream, and left bank would be on the left side. So that would be on Dennis McCall's side where we did the
On the
levee
east- on the east
reconstruction.
side.
Yes.
If we do not have easements, now you're talking about going in and buying these easements?
We, well, yeah, the Corps did get easements when they originally built this. They handed those easements off to the Drainage District Board. Those documents are gone. Some of them got filed. Other ones, we have the plans from the Corps when they put in the actual dikes, and they show that the easements should be there, but nothing ever got recorded in the courthouse.
So we're not,
About 2/3 of them got recorded, about 1/3 of them are just nowhere. The Corps doesn't have a record of them anymore. They say they don't keep that, which is another issue, but.
I know,
And
I've dealt with the.
It's one of our frustrations.
My concern is if we can go in and do this, you know, if we don't have a legitimate easement,
and that
we
was-
don't have any right to be there.
Exactly, and that's been, there is an applied easement because they allowed the drainage district to go in there and build this. So there's an implied easement, even though it didn't get actually recorded. It did get constructed, just because it didn't get filed doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
And it didn't get, but if it didn't get constructed in the right place,
Correct. Yeah, there's an intent too. That goes in probably back into the legalese stuff. You know, if you say I'm gonna put a utility line here and you get permission, but you put it over here instead, the intent was for the easement to follow the utility. And this is essentially the same thing. The intent was the easement should follow the dike.
But I think
I hope you're that good in court.
But I think the positive thing in that is that the 25-foot error, the easement's actually east of it, so it's in their favor compared to what was recorded as.
You mean they're picking up ground where
They will pick up ground when the easements are actually put in place for the area that we have.
so are you gonna file on all these easements once this is completed?
Yeah, we'll file all the corrected easements based off of the existing shots in the field when we get to it. And then we'll also set pins in the field. The county's gonna set posts beside them so that the farmers are aware this is the new line, this is where it's gonna be.
And the question that was asked about the cost, that's just to do this. It's got nothing to do with the improvements that have to be made.
That's correct, yes.
Do you have a figure there?
No, I don't yet. I mean, the biggest end of this initial compliance is going to be notices to the property owners saying cease and desist farming here, marking the areas, and then going out and cutting the trees that have encroached in the profile of the levee. That, we're probably looking at $5,000 in expense to knock out those trees and then eliminate the stumps and repair the root systems. That is a continuation of efforts that we've already been doing and billing to the district. When we start looking at having to do a major repair like has been spoken of north of the 141 bridge, the last time we looked at that, it was over $250,000.
And I think there's only one property owner there, and that's Smithland.
There's multiple property owners there. Persinger is one, and then there's a couple on the Smithland side. Morthorst has some of that ground, and then there's numerous smaller owners too in that upper area.
Okay, it's a can of worms, but
It is. I mean, I wish we didn't have to deal with this, but
Mark,
I
how
would-
much?
Sorry, go ahead.
How much is the existing contract?
the last contract was $76.85 or some number like that. Something. $8,500 roughly, and he has used all of those hours
Okay.
with the work that's been done to date, and we have paid him in full for that.
I know we set a threshold in our policy for drainage districts as far as when we hold a hearing.
That threshold, as I recall, was 20,000 before we'd have a hearing.
Right.
Are you comfortable, Joshua?
Or do
Are
we
we
want
under-
to have further discussion of this and invite the district members in before a decision's made on it? At this point, we're well below that threshold of 13, but, you know, this, over the past 18 months, we've already spent 8,500.
So you're saying if you cobble those two together, you might start to
Then we push
bump
to
up?
20, you know. Well, yeah, simple math, 8,000,
Right.
13,000, we're at.
Believe it or
we're
not, I
over
can do it.
21.
That was just a question
That's a good
raised
point,
in my
Joshua.
mind.
I hadn't been thinking about that because this is going into fiscal year 17 now, and I was thinking the prior work was all done in 16. I think Craig's.
And did we
actually
set it at
correct.
20 or did we set it at 25?
I thought it was
Set at
20. I thought it was 25, but I may
Oh,
be
you
wrong.
might be right.
25 was
It's
what
been
I
a
was
while
thinking
since-
in my mind, but
Yeah.
I don't have it in front of me.
I think
either,
we did
so-
it about half of what the level where it was mandated.
Which is 50.
Right.
Well, there is a payback to them if they get ground back, most of them. A few of them might not be happy.
There'll be a couple that won't be, but most of them I think will be able to actually get money back.
The other end is, this is not a, we'd like to, it's we shall.
And that's a not to exceed cost, so there's no guarantee that we're going to get up to 13. We might be more like 2 or 3.
No, we do an hourly cost up to that maximum.
And you'll earn it out there, I've been out there.
Oh, yeah. I already been up there too.
And again, Craig, you know, every time that we've had an increase in scope, we've brought this back to the board for additional consideration.
What are the mechanics of keeping folks in the loop that this is going on? I mean, I know that there's a published agenda, but if we go ahead and we just grant that motion to receive and the project contract extension, is there something that could be sent out, even though we're not asking for?
We could send out a letter to the people within the district notifying them that survey work is being done, that the easements are being reevaluated. and
I think
we
that'd be a
can
nice
compose a letter.
gesture just to keep people in the loop so they know that this cost may be coming and what's happening.
Craig has worked with the city of Smithland because he went through their records as well. I think you've got a couple landowner contacts as well.
Well, the minute you show up out there, somebody calls.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I would move to receive the report and grant the contract extension with the project consultant.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no, and the motion carries 5-0.
This requires both the chair's signature and the author's.
Thank you very much. We will now adjourn the Bennett McDonald Smithland Drainage District Trustee meeting. We'll continue, thank you, the Board of Supervisors meeting. And in doing so, Human Resources Director Ed Gilliland. Evening, Ed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no, and the motion carries 5-0. Item B is to authorize the chairman to sign authorization to initiate the hiring process.
Move it.
I would second for discussion.
There's a second for discussion. Supervisor Clausen.
Is there somebody already hired?
For emergency management. Currently, Michelle is interim emergency management coordinator. We do not have anybody else in mind at this point. We need to post that. She's taken the deputy auditor position.
No, I understand that, but what it says is the authorization to hire effective August 17th. That's tomorrow.
That's to run the ad.
I'm sorry.
That's actually to run the ad. Should be processed.
So you're asking, just so I understand, the authorization to go out and hire as of the 17th, is that right?
Okay.
Further, yes. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say no, and the motion carries 5-0. That's coming back and forth. The item number 10 is approval of a resolution thanking and commending the county employee for years of service. Just for the public's information, this is a resolution thanking and commending Gene Jessen. We'll read this in full when Gene is here, but 30 years. Gene has done some wonderful, wonderful things. So this will be coming around with a pen, and I will move it.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say no, and the motion carries 5-0. Item number 11 is approval of resolution thanking and commending Deputy Brad Rose for his exemplary action in the line of duty. Again, we will read this in full in front of his presence, but just to give a very brief overview, Sheriff Dave Drew did a wonderful job in closing comments, highlighting the kind of respect, dignity, care, and kindness that this deputy showed to some individuals. It was highlighted on Sioux Land News Matters, a very nice piece, and so I think it's appropriate that we respond as a board to actions like that. And so with that, I would move that resolution as well.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no, and the motion carries 5-0. Both of those resolutions will come your way with the same pen. Item 12, Planning and Zoning. Director John Palello. This is approval of a resolution approving the final plating for Deer Run Addition, a minor subdivision, and authorization of the chairman's signature upon said resolution. John, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Good evening, supervisors. You last considered this request for a subdivision on a 25-acre parcel from the Robley, from Kathy Robley, who was the executor of the estate of the Dale Rafael Dice estate. They're doing this for estate administration purposes. This is a parcel that's about 1.2 miles from northeast of Sergeant Bluff. The zoning commission met on the 25th and recommends conditionally the approval of the final plating. The condition being the recording of a paving agreement subject to county paving policies. That document has been prepared and is executed and will be recorded shortly after the recording of the final plat. We're here to answer any questions. Basically, we're asking for a motion that you approve the final plating and authorize your chairman's signature.
Move it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no, and the motion carries 5-0.
Is this the original, John?
No, it's not. I have to collect those from you if you don't want them. I'll leave the Mylar with the auditor's office for the chairman's signature and maybe attestation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Item 13, Board Administration. This is our budget analyst, Dennis Butler. This is clarification, information, and further discussion concerning Rivers Region taxation, service delivery, region response, and the future. Dennis?
Okay, Dennis Butler, Finance, Board of Supervisors. I have included here several pieces of information. I'm open to any questions on it. I did include some emails that Shane Walters said go ahead and share with all the board members here. He did say how many consumers are Woodbury County consumers and how many are non-Woodbury County consumers, with the exception on the 415 on non-county consumers. Potentially, state cases and other, that 166 could be potentially most of Woodbury County residents. We don't know that because they can't tell really from the bills they are getting from the state. So I guess I showed the budget each year. The first 2 years are when is the mental health or county service fund. The last 2 years, 15, 16, are under the direction of Sioux Rivers Board, Region Board. Shows the budget, expenditures, and then unspent funds. Then I went down to fiscal year reductions. This is for taxes. We're showing how they split it up into 2 years. On the next page, or 3 pages, I did show the 3-year tax asking totals, population, kind of, relevant, I guess, back and forth, the percentages. Then I did on the 1 page here toward the back before the emails, I showed how much money did Woodbury County pay in the Sioux Rivers region. Again, those are the years when it actually became, the first year A, 14, 15 is still in county services, 15, 16, 16, 17 is when it was over to the region. I showed Sioux County, Woodbury, Sioux, and Plymouth counties. And then you have the cases served by counties. Shane provided, this was kind of the last minute here request, and he did the best he could do. And then you have the emails.
So there was a correct, just to make sure that we get kind of the big picture of all this, because it's a lot of numbers and it's a lot of detail. So there was a correction at one point to some of the numbers.
Correct. Woodbury County is correct. Sioux County, we only had half the taxes collected each year, so I did increase that to $2.957 million over a 3-year total, and then Plymouth County was correct. So the total tax asking over 3 years was $14,107,634. I did break it down by percentage, how much the county puts in. Each county, Woodbury County puts in 71.30 of 100%, and 21% is Sioux County, and 7.7% is Plymouth County. Then you can see the breakdown of population. You can see where Woodbury County goes down a little bit in comparison with the whole district region. You can see where Sioux County is at 21% and Plymouth is at 15%. There is movement somewhat to remove the caps by the legislature because Plymouth County does fall a little short because of their valuation, things like that. So there is a move to remove the caps.
So just to get the big picture, some of the numbers changed slightly.
Correct.
Woodbury County was at 71% of the tax askings, Sioux County 21%, Plymouth County 7.7%. And then I think in fairness, I think we've included everything that Shane Walter has stated, and that's a fair point. Most of the services and the cases are within Woodbury County, so roughly 68%. Nobody's, or at least I wasn't denying that. And so just thought I'd share all the interesting back and forth. Comments, discussion?
I think what this clarifies is this isn't about Woodbury County, this is about the region. It's the counties do not stand alone. They contribute into the region, and then the money is spent back accordingly in the region, not individual counties. So I think people in the region might have taken offense because it looked like what was being said that Woodbury County was being shorted, when that's, far from the case. We're probably receiving more than we're putting in.
I agree with your first statement.
It's a region.
I agree with your first statement. And I want to just affirm, as I did many a time, my intention was not to say we're somehow getting the short end of the stick. My only intention was to say, and these are the numbers, hard to argue with math, 70% of the money is being put in by Woodbury County, and probably 70%, roughly, of the cases are within Woodbury County. That's the only thing I was trying to say. And it was in relationship to how much control we have over so many different things. It wasn't that we're putting in 70%, we're only getting 25% of the cases and the services here. It was simply that if we have the lion's share of both money in and money being expended, having that little control is ironic. I know that's a philosophical disagreement, but that was my only point, and I assured Shane with bated breath that I meant nothing else.
Okay. And the other thing it points out as far as consumers is Woodbury County has 1,096, and Sioux and Plymouth combined have 249.
Absolutely.
And the rest of those are state cases.
So we have about 80% of the cases then.
Right.
And that was again, kind of my point was 80% of all the cases and 70% of all the money. We've got the most going in and the most as far as who's being served. We should have a little bit more than, in my opinion, a little bit more control over some things. But that's just my opinion.
But I have a question. How do you get any more control? I don't understand.
Well, I think having control over your own building, I think having control over some of the staffing levels, some of the things of getting something on the agenda in the 2080 agreement, some of those things, the taxing levy, all of those things, that's what I was kind of alluding to in the big picture. I was saying it's just ironic having most of the dollars in and most of the clientele and little control along those lines, in my, again, humble opinion.
Well, it's not a philosophical disagreement. We disagree because we're not a standalone. We're a part of a body. And we have, when it was set up, the votes were 2, 2, and 2 because it was a region and we were supposed to act together. And I think that's what's been happening. I do have a question. Is there a meeting with the DHS, the Attorney General's office?
Yes, there will be a meeting Thursday. It will be with our counsel, Matthew and I.
You know, may I ask what the meeting is for?
Discuss our options.
Well, our options are the board's options. And I was not privy to any of this. Were you, Jeremy?
I was aware that there was a meeting that was set up to take place with legal counsel. Beyond that,
But it's not our legal counsel, it's an outside legal counsel.
right? Heinemann Law Firm.
Is our county attorney involved?
Yes. It was requested June 14th. We got a response over a month later, and it was scheduled then for this Thursday. So it wasn't directly related to anything in the last couple months.
So is it options as far as the Triview building, or are you thinking much larger, like trying to break up the region?
Who's your question directed?
Yeah,
Mark?
I mean, is it
We need to know what we can do and what we can't do.
as far as the building, or,
The whole thing.
so your intent, wow, rather than go through mediation to work out differences? But you guys are the representatives, I'm sure you'll report back.
Well, but wait, I don't care who the representatives are. This should be something the entire board is involved with, not just two representatives. If decisions like that are being made.
You don't know what the options are until you have that discussion. We're going to have that discussion Thursday, and then we'll come back with it.
We should have that in a closed session with the full board there, because I might have different questions than you have.
Well, maybe that'll happen after this.
Well, that's very arrogant, and, you know, if you want to be the driving force on whatever is going to happen without informing the rest of the board, I mean, that's ridiculous.
Well, this meeting got set up last week.
Nobody knew
Late
about
last
it.
week. We didn't know if it ever happened.
I didn't even
There
know
was
it
never a
was requested.
response. Well,
And so where's the communication here?
Well, it's happening right now.
Yeah, it's happening right now because I brought it up because I found out about it.
Well, I
But
think
nobody from this board told me anything about it.
Well, that's, we've kind of gone down this road before. We do this in an open forum instead of calling and having a walking quorum. And you know that 2 of your representatives have sought what our options are, and I would expect that they would report back what they are, and go from there.
I personally don't even know why we're looking at our options.
I don't either. I don't have a
I
clue
mean-
what's going on here.
What don't you have a clue about?
We're talking about looking at options. Options to do what?
Could be an option to stand alone. It could be an option to continue. It could be an option to see if there's another region. Right?
Who's making those decisions?
On gathering information, 2 representatives have asked to engage legal counsel. That falls clearly under the chair's discretion, as it always has. And they have gone forward.
Normally, and I hate to use the word normally because things are not normal around here, in the past, things like this were done with the full knowledge of the entire board.
Larry, I spent 10 years with you and didn't know a thing about what was going on.
Mark,
You never
that would-
shared
That would
information.
be your fault.
No.
Well, before we get a bridge too far, I
is a
lament
bridge
that
too far.
I lament that Pat Gill's not here to, once again, be the third party arbitrator on this, and state that that wasn't the case. But they will come back. They will report back. Here are some things going forward, and this full board will decide based on some of the counsel and advice that's, I'm sure, given.
Of course, we're not going to be privy to that advice. We're
Sure
going
you
to
will.
get secondhand.
And you can trust your representatives to give it.
Would it be
Sure,
possible
you can.
to get the questions that you're asking so we at least know what the parameters are that you're trying to find out? I mean,
Gentlemen,
this is kind of a big deal.
There are
This is
no
a-
specific questions. It's just as Mark said, options regarding staying, leaving, standing alone.
Well, I can give you the answer
Feasibility
to a
and
number of those
analysis.
questions. You can't
We don't-
stand alone.
We don't know what what DHS is going to say because, again, this meeting was requested a couple months ago and we're just getting our first contact.
I would request that the chair post this as a supervisors meeting and we go into closed session if I wish we had an attorney here, if this falls under litigation or whatever it would fall under.
DHS requested the agenda before they'd agree to drive from Des Moines, and so I'm not sure that they would.
There is an agenda.
How did the agenda get put together?
With legal counsel, internal and external.
You're not, just to clarify,
Not a
you're not
pub-
talking
no.
about a publicly
No.
posted agenda of an open
No,
meeting.
DHS
She's talking
requested
about-
a guide, of course, they want to know what the topic is, so.
And
it's a
the
general
rest-
discussion.
Yeah, the rest
It's a
of the
general-
board members would too.
Well, as Mark said, it was set up last week, so it's not like we've been holding out on you because this is our.
Well, it was requested apparently a month or so ago.
And they did not respond.
So we had
Right, I
nothing
didn't
to
know you even
report.
requested it. So it's a little hard to deal with if you don't know that things are happening. Now they're going to happen, and we still don't know what's going on.
Well, you know that there's a meeting.
Transparency is a big word that's been used by everybody on this board, and there just isn't any.
Well, I disagree with you.
You
but-
can disagree, and but the facts would bear me out. This is another case. Nobody knew this was going on, except the three, yourself, Mark, and Matthew.
Well, we've given a lot of reports on communication with DHS. I'm not certain that we didn't say that we had reached out.
Oh, you didn't. I would know if you were meeting with the state's attorney's office.
Well, and just to, I can compile, and I won't get to be too far, Chance, but that's why I'm trying to give every single email that there is back and forth so that nobody says, well, I didn't know about this. Every single email that I've sent Shane Walter, Mark Luch, even when I've had phone conversations, I've run nervous that you were going to say that I didn't report everything, and I've tried to type out what it was that we talked about. And so trying to just, trying to keep you pleased.
But you're failing. That's about
Someday.
the only way I can say it.
Someday.
And Jeremy, I just hate to come to these meetings anymore. It's just
Well, I don't want
one
that to be the,
surprise after another, and I'm not a part of the board. I know that.
I'm sorry you feel that way. Any other clarifications, questions, discussions? Dennis, anything else?
I do wish you would consider posting that as a closed session, and we could all go. If we're talking about leaving the region, I would like to hear straight from the horse's mouth what the options are.
What options are?
You know, it's not what you say, it's what you hear. Your guide, Carl, wrote that book, the big Republican message guide. I read it, and it was very good.
Is that Karl Rove?
That was
What if we don't like Carl Road?
I don't know. You two can get together afterwards. All right, item number 14, building services, Kenny Schmitz. This is Woodbury County Buildings, HVAC systems, information, and Kenny.
Kenny Schmitz, Building Services. Reported several months ago some of the issues, that we have related with HVAC in our buildings. We set aside some money in the 2017 CIP to address some of those repairs, and we've looked into the different avenues or different options and choices that we have on how we would move forward with those. What Shane's handing out is basically a picture of the two different options that you see in your agenda item. And I've got some positives and negatives drafted for item or option 1 and option 2. Basically what option 1 does for us is it addresses all the front end controls at each of the buildings. What that allows us to do is get on for better word or terms, is to get on a computer and look at those buildings and see what they're doing. And it ties in the major parts of those buildings, in other words, a boiler or a chiller. But what option number 1 does not allow us to do is have full function and control over all of those items, or the heating and the cooling in different offices and different areas of those buildings. It just allows us to see that and look at the major components of that building. So it doesn't really help us with the creature comforts. If you look at option number 2, option number 2 is just addressing 2 of the buildings, and that would be the courthouse and the law enforcement center. Option number 2 allows us to take care of all the creature comforts of those buildings. It allows us to fully control all of the offices and all of the areas in those 2 buildings. So it allows full functional control of at least 2 county buildings. There is currently not enough money allocated in the CIP to do everything with all of the buildings.
How much money is allocated in the CIP, Kenny? For this roughly, or Dennis?
Dennis, if we tied all those numbers together.
We're just talking about 3 buildings, correct?
No, we're talking about all of our HVAC CIP
Courthouse,
allocations.
LEC, Trosperhoit, Dorothy, Pico, District Health, and Tribune.
Yes.
We have probably about 800,000.
So if I just characterize it like this, we can get all of those buildings to the 50-yard line, right? So you get front-end controls and you can see things, but none of them score a touchdown, or you can get 2 of them and score a touchdown with them, but not at least start addressing the other 5. Is that a fair characterization?
That's a fair characterization. Either one of those options are going to be about the same cost.
What do you recommend?
If I were to make a recommendation to this board, it would be to move with option number 2 and at least get full functionality in 2 different buildings in the county.
I like that too, just from the sense that you can actually start to save in energy and start to address creature comforts. Everything else gets you the visualization, but you're not really, you're just setting up the next step. And my worry is, especially when we start to spend that kind of money, that people say, well, you just spent that money and we really don't know a difference. Now, your people may be able to visually see temperatures and what a VAV or a heating valve is doing, but that's my sense of it.
Right, and it would be at that point just a visual. We wouldn't be able to make any adjustments or do anything to solve that problem. Another thing to consider in option one, or in option number one, there would absolutely not be any rebates or energy rebates available. Option number two, there is a possibility that we might be able to get some rebates. And so this is for information for today. At the board's discretion, if you would like, I can get costs that would be firmer pricing on option number two if you think that's a direction you would like to head.
Do you have a ballpark figure for option two?
I believe our ballpark figure would be utilizing all of the funds we have allocated in the CIP, so nearly $800,000 are in that range.
Which two buildings?
The courthouse and the law enforcement center.
What do you need? What do you want? A motion for option two?
Well, it sounds like it's an information item tonight. Would you want to put it back on as a?
There you go.
I will come back with the
Okay.
board as
With some numbers.
Good job on the information. Other questions, discussion to make sure?
The other monies for the other buildings, was that for this work?
yes. It was allocated all for HVAC.
All right, thank you very much, Kenny. We'll expect that back.
Thank you.
And you can probably stay close to the podium. We're to the chairman's report. Item A is the LEC expansion. That committee is no longer meeting because they have served their life and now making a recommendation. So this is a work group that's now actually gone into the design development phase and implementation. On the way back from Camp Dodge, I was able to get probably 5 or 10 minutes, but I said, please make sure that you address the whole board. It sounds like things are moving. You had 4 or 5 hours maybe of discussion today. Anything from a high-level overview? We don't want to know colors or anything.
High-level overview, we did some refinement, slight refinement in the overall design. Really didn't affect any numbers of cells or anything major like that. This design or phase is the design where we start dropping in where equipment placement might go and how the operations all roll together and function. And so with in conjunction with the Sheriff's Department, we did make some suggested small changes in the design, and Goldberg Group is going to be updating and looking at the refinements as far as the all the legal requirements and so forth, as far as space requirements to make sure that those changes are working.
Questions on that item? I just want everyone to know, I don't think it's the right thing for Supervisor Monson, myself, to kind of be managing these. Professionals and experts need to do this, but please, as it comes up, keep us updated along the way.
We will. I think you would have been very bored had you been in attendance today. So
thank you. Item B is information requesting tuck pointing and evaluation of costs. Again, in talking a little bit with Kenny, I wanted to please address the board on this. Just tell us a little bit about tuck pointing, and I know this isn't an information item and there's not extensive backup, but just give us a little bit of a preview of what you're finding out and about and what we can maybe expect to hear from you in the next month or two regarding some of the condition of the outside of the building.
yes. So we had a tuck pointing representative come in and take a look at the courthouse. And originally, Shane with the Baker Group had shown them some items that I had been concerned with early on. Unfortunately, I'm not a professional eye in tuck pointing. However, the gentleman that was here did pick out some specific items. One thing that is of very much concern to us is the terracotta which surrounds the outside of the building. He pointed out some areas that have 1-inch gaps in the terracotta, and we're very concerned. Shane, would you like to come and express some of his comments?
Shane Albrecht with the Baker Group. I walked around with Craig from Mid-Continent. CMBA, Terry Glade, that we've been working with, suggested Craig as being one of the things. Plus, he's also doing all the work here in town for the city of Sioux City and all the different buildings. They've got 4 different buildings. He's been in the business for a long time, so we want to get a ballpark idea of what this would cost and what his opinion of the place was if this really needed some work. Looking around the terracotta, especially the big overhangs over the courtroom windows that Supervisor Munson and myself had looked at, was concerned about some of that. As we were walking around, we caught a little bit of a surprise. Out the door by where people stand out in the alley, if you look up above there, that's some of the worst terracotta that was there. There's big 1-inch gaps. When Kenny and myself and our knowledge, we had no idea, but when they go to restore the terracotta, they actually have to take it down to Tuckport to fix it. We assumed they would just pack it and put new mortar in there and we'd be good to go. When he looked at the mortar that's in the terracotta, it's not the right level of mortar that they use nowadays in the terracotta. The mortar's too hard, and what that actually means is the mortar's meant to fail, not the terracotta. Your terracotta will fail, not the mortar. The mortar's harder than the terracotta, which is what's causing the breakage and the small pieces falling off. So to fix the terracotta, they actually have to take them down, put new wires and reattach them to the beams, and then put them back up. A lot more costly of a process than any of us would have ever guessed.
You've got money for tuck pointing in CIP.
Yes.
Yes.
How much? I want to say 450? Is that?
450, that's correct.
So what's 450? And I didn't know anything about tuck pointing, but what's 450 get you? With what you're...
Okay, so unfortunately, 450 gets you setting the scaffold up around the 3rd floor. That's what it gets you. They feel the cost to set the scaffold up to be able to do floors 3 through 8 on the interior tower that would have to set on the roof. That bill, scarily enough, could be $400,000.
Supervisor
I don't remember the time, but it seems like 20 years ago, we went through this, through the tuck pointing, on the overhangs, and I don't remember how much.
So 20 years ago, time got away from me just a little bit. We found the plans. 1980 was when they did a tuck pointing restoration. I'm assuming that's the one that you're talking about.
No, this would have been right around 1990.
Okay. Anyway, we found plans for an extensive tuck pointing done that was done in different processes throughout the courthouse, different locations that are located on a set of plans that she had drawn up, and it's dated 1980.
Well, maybe that's when the plans were and the work was done later.
Gotcha. The pictures of all doing it, they're all older cars, but yes. Anyway, so the work was done. We looked at a lot of that work. It wasn't done for restoration. Some of it was done as a fix. So there's a whole bunch of brick up there that had cracked, and you started seeing structural cracks coming down them. They put silicone and they smeared it in there so that the bricks didn't expand anymore, and they tried to keep the water out. They didn't actually go in and put new bricks in or cut the mortar out or fix it. One of the front faces up on floors 3 through 8 that's leaning out considerably with one of the 2 big structural cracks down the brick. You can clearly see that this has been fixed previously. That was one of the things we could even notice, and Craig pointed out all this stuff, and Craig is the the gentleman from Mid-Continent that was an expert at this. You can walk around and see on the parapet walls all the different caulk that was smeared on there to try to seal some of the cracks to get you by. I could share this. This was a question we asked of him. The City Hall, one of their projects right now they're doing is they're coming back to re-caulk City Hall for the stone pieces on the outside. I guess the project to be, I don't know, 15 years old. Is that fair for everybody? How long?
Where they redid the whole thing.
Where they redid the whole thing. It's $100,000, and they're not doing anything other than going up in a lift and redoing caulk joints. That I was shocked would be a good word. That he goes, and it's a very easy project, and it's $100,000. This is not an easy project. Just to give you an idea of scope, and that's after just 15 years, and it's just caulk.
Well, thanks for the good news, gentlemen. Do you have in all seriousness, thanks for sharing. Do you have any semblance of plan going forward, or what this might be? Just to
the terracotta, his rough estimate on what that was to fix it was $1 million project. The overall tuck pointing, he was guessing it to be a $2 to $3 million project to fix all 8 floors of the courthouse.
Terracotta being the more of the safety concern with the overhang?
With the exception of just those 2 structural cracks, all the rest of the stuff needs to happen just from a maintenance so it doesn't continue to get worse. But it's
so of the 450,000, let me just ask this: is there anything right now that we need to mitigate that's going to be a health safety concern?
I would have to say, there's a few pieces.
I think we need to know that within the next 7 to 10 days.
Sure.
Because obviously we need to know that.
That's fair enough, yes.
So there's a way forward. Is there other information, discussion? I just wanted, once I'd heard this, I wanted everybody to hear it and go from there. Okay. We'll see and hear more from you. Thank you. Item C, juvenile detention budget information clarification. I hope you have your numbers in front of you. This is kind of a wild ride. In trying to keep everyone informed with what was going on, because Mark Olson had told me that he was having trouble with the BIA contract. Just so you know, with a lot of pushing and pulling, that's just about ready to come back in front of the board, because we haven't been able to keep any BIA residents since late June. Correct, Dennis?
Correct.
And so we budgeted off of revenue having some of those residents in reimbursement. Dennis and Mark and I got together, and Mark Olson had originally said, well, we have approximately $75,000, $80,000 from FY16 in the plus. So that's going to kind of offset the BIA. I asked Dennis, and Dennis said, no, we're actually that in the negative. And I said, somebody's not on the same sheet of music. So we got together. Here's what I've discerned happen. Dennis is going to correct me if I'm wrong on anything. FY16, which is right here, Mark had not adjusted his numbers up, but Dennis had. Dennis had adjusted those numbers up based on the increase that the board took from $100 a day to $150 a day. And so Mark believed that we were actually going to see some overages, but he did not have accounted for this higher figure. And so therefore, here's some bad news. That's not offsetting BIA, because we'd already budgeted for that higher amount. And Mark's initial report that there was money over and above was based on lower budgeted numbers. Does that first part make sense to everyone?
Yep.
But then, the story gets better. If you go to FY17, notice that those numbers are way back down. We are still charging $150 a day. And so those are Mark's numbers from 2016. And so we've under budgeted now And because we've under budgeted, even with VIA, everything's going to essentially be a wash. I hope all that made sense to you, because it took me about 12 and a half hours to figure it out with these gentlemen. But this is an artificially, the FY17 is an artificially low budget number because based on the previous $100 a day expense. So that the budgets really are kind of reversed. Dennis and I talked about ways in the future to ensure that everybody's on the same sheet of music. And just correct me if I said anything in error.
Oh, it's right. And what we're doing now, when I did meet with Mark individually this morning for about 45 minutes, and we determined there's some items that the treasurer had put in the wrong fund. We did have some electronic monitoring money put in the wrong fund. General base should have been general sup. There were some monies that they turned over a list to him. They're actually electronic monitoring. They're under care and keep. So visiting with Erica, the deputy up there in charge of accounting, we are getting those funds put in the correct fund and also in the correct line item, where GPS monitoring will have only GPS monitoring. Care and keep will only have the state of Nebraska, Dakota County, and BIA and the state grant in that line item. That was one of the problems we had. And the problem we have is we got two systems here. We got HTE and we got solutions. They're operating solutions for on HTE. Sometimes the coding doesn't get properly coded by us or them. We feel it should go in this one, and they felt that they have another line they put it in. So it's hard, and the auditors have commented this in about the last 4 or 5 audits because we have two systems. But in the future, Mark and I and every other department, whether the sheriff, whoever it is, when we get their revenue projections, we're going to go back and look at history and see if they're close, they're way under, or way over. And if there are very big variance, we will have a discussion further to get it corrected. So for 17-18, the next budget cycle coming up, there'll be a lot more consultation with the department heads and elected officials to get this more accurately. It must be remembered, though, when we set these revenues or budgets, we're setting these 15 months ahead of time. You're setting them in January or February, it's 4 or 5 months before the year even starts. Then you got 12-month cycle there, and who could ever predict how many juveniles we're going to have, how many BIA juveniles we're going to have? It's almost impossible. All you can do is go on history. And hopefully history, we keep that level, maybe a little bit better, so we get a little more revenue.
Very good. Any questions?
Denny, we're talking about 16 and we're talking about 17.
16 was just completed. In 17, we don't have any revenue yet because we do not have a BIA contract, or we don't have any reimbursements from the counties.
Is that the 17-18 budget you're talking about?
16-17. Our current year budget, fiscal year 17 is 16-17. 16 is a fiscal year we just completed.
Well, that was 15-16.
Correct. Yeah.
Now we're in 16-17.
Yes, that's the top set of numbers.
And so I think the main point is we didn't anticipate losing, $190,000 on the total budgeted revenues from 16 to 17.
But this is one budget year is what I'm trying to get at.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a wash, the budget.
It'll be a wash, the revenue back and forth. That's what we're trying. That's what we said.
You're hoping.
Well, we hope it does. Even with lower numbers here and not having BIA for a month and a half, as soon as they get the contract back for the board to approve and sign, they'll immediately start putting people back in. So we could see a week or two, probably a week worth of August instead of losing a whole month possibly.
And Mark is well aware that if that contract comes in on Thursday or Friday or Monday, Karen, up until 4 o'clock, we're going to put it on the agenda and repush it because we have been doing every single thing to get that contract done and get this thing settled.
Did you start early enough trying to negotiate it or something?
They lost the contract person, BIA lost the person who was in charge of contracts, and according to Mark, and I've been in touch with him over the last few weeks on this, is he has been pushing to get this, and it was on their end and asking. So everything that I can see, he's been doing his due diligence. It's been on their end.
And it's to their advantage to get it done.
Right.
Otherwise, you got to ship them to Madison or Omaha.
They did mention that we are one of the higher ones at $150. My response is you pay for quality. You have a local option sales tax report. Is that something that?
Those I try to get to you monthly. That's the update.
Does everybody have this?
Correct.
Okay.
The only
Thank you.
good news, well, it's all good news, but the good news is the Hard Rock Casino is actually generating a lot more revenue than we anticipated. Their last month was 41,500, which would equate to revenue of 8.9 million.
Okay.
So it is putting a little more unallocated funds back in there. Hopefully it'll continue. Again, when CF pulls out, I hate to blame one company and not blame them, we're going to feel an impact everywhere. Our local option sales tax, our gaming revenue, everything's going to feel an impact.
But Seaboard and Triumph come on.
There you
That
go.
should help a little
That's
bit.
1,100 there compared to 5,400. But 1,100 will be permanent. They'll be here. And if they add another shift, that's another 1,100.
Okay. Thank you, Dennis. All right, now we are to item D, scheduling the first floor boardroom with Karen James, Heather Satterwhite. Just so you know, that screen that you come in and you see on the left-hand side not only has all the department heads, so you know who's in and out, and that's very helpful, but we'll also use that for scheduling that room if need be. So they'll keep that as well. All right, item 16, reports on committee meetings.
I only have one, and I forgot to bring this stuff, but the Community Action Agency runs Head Start. They have 400 kids in the program roughly, and I would say 80% are non-Caucasian, non-English speaking. And in the third quarter, at the end of the year, they are speaking and understanding English at 93%. That's unbelievable. It works.
Great. Other committee meetings? Any citizen concerns? Board concerns and comments. I just have one. This morning I made a point to wake up and watch at 7:30 Shelby Houlihan race, and she came from behind. You had to finish in the top 5 in order to qualify, and she was 4th out of 5, and I got up and I ran, and I was just like, I set a record for myself in the 2-mile. I'm not going to embarrass myself and tell you what it was, but it was inspiring, and good luck from the whole board. That was pretty cool. Hit that gas pedal a little harder, Sheriff.
I ran to the
Unless
coffee
it's
pot.
downhill, you didn't. I have a concern.
Yes.
I talked to Kenny Schmidt, said Kenny contact you. The board office on second floor, what is that?
The board chair office is a...
Now, wait a minute, now, it's the chair's office now?
Right.
Where's the board office?
Board office is the large room that has 7 it has a circular configuration that you can schedule anything that you'd like.
The board is...
The old board office.
All right, the board has always had an office for all of the supervisors to use. Now, has that changed?
Yeah, that's the one that we're referring to in the empty meeting room. I understand. I had heard because Kenny talked to me and said Supervisor Clausen is requesting some keys to get into there, to which I said, what is his intent? Because I had made it clear on the PowerPoint and the email to everyone that I'd be officing out of there. And he said, or it was to have a meeting. And I said, well, that room with the 7 chairs, you all know the old boardroom, who's using that? Well, no one was using it all day. So I thought, well, it'd be good to have it on a schedulable calendar if anybody would like to use that.
You know you can't always schedule that, though. Sometimes you just walk, I'm sure that happens to you in your office. You're just there and a department head wants to talk to you, or, I mean, I can see scheduling it when you can, but there are many things that if you're in the building, you end up in a meeting with someone. Someone wants to talk to you. And you can't schedule all of it.
Yeah, I would say 95%, like that particular day. I had asked, well, because I had heard about breaking on the door like the Kool-Aid man, and so I had asked if that board room was being utilized. It hadn't been all day long, and I think it's rare. So, does that help?
Not really.
What about the area upstairs with that long table? Is that available?
I believe so. I know our auditor, deputy auditor, does some training from time to time, but I would say if, as a secondary measure, if that old boardroom, which is available 90+% of the time, isn't, that would be a good
Well, I think
secondary
that's
option.
something you should talk to the auditor about. I mean, originally Dennis was under the auditor, so that was all the auditor's space. So, you know, through the course of just kind of moving him over, now we've taken that office, and I don't think you should think you can use the other without checking with him first, because I just think that's his area.
And I know through this whole remodeling that I've mentioned, you know, the board office on the second floor. I never was under the assumption that the chair was going to have that as an office, a personal office, and lock it.
If I wasn't clear, maybe I should have been earlier on. I know that you had said, well, you need to have an office, and I thought, well, you know, every other elected official head of, you know, like the auditor, the county attorney, they have their offices, and so I thought, I know deep down Supervisor Clausen would want me to have that space.
Well, I don't have a problem with that. I just have a problem with not being able to utilize it. Because if I'm down here and I want to meet with a citizen, I want to meet with a department head, I want to meet with an employee, I don't have an office to meet in. Where before, the board had an office.
Dennis did say we could use his office if we need to.
Throw him out?
Use one. I don't want to
He
do that
likes
because he
take
has
one
work
for
to
the team,
do,
and I
but
appreciate that. I think the larger point is that almost nearly all the time, that old board office is available. And if it's not all work, or we can all work with the auditor's office to say as a secondary, would that area outside of that be available?
and I would imagine it would change with whoever is chair. If I was chair, I would have no problem with, just like we did before. If someone's here, they need to use it, and they want to use that office to climb those stairs,
I don't
that would be
understand
fine.
it, Jeremy, but that's fine. I mean,
And that's kind of where I was at, because I was like, wow, there's 8 chairs, but you want to be in a space with a desk with 2 chairs.
but a telephone.
You should have taken that office, Jeremy. You should have taken, the one with the 7 chairs and the one at the front.
Yeah,
and-
move
no,
right
that
on
one.
in.
You know what? If you tempt me, I might be in there next week. All right, any other discussion or concern?
I do have one more.
Yes.
I just need to schedule a meeting with you, Major Stallman, because I must be bored. So now I'm looking up all this information on the NACO website about federal reimbursement for incarcerations, jail visits for incarcerated individuals. So I'm not sure where I was at. We're evidently a suspended state for Medicaid benefits for incarcerated. But the reports, and I've got them here, all indicate that most of the states in the United States are underutilizing federal funds, and the states and counties that are accessing them are really saving quite a bit of money on their medical bills, because as we know, they're skyrocketing. So I just need to get some figures from you. I just want to go over and increase my understanding if there's something that we can do together to lobby the state to get them, because I think that's where the bugaboo is at that level, but I'm not sure. So I've got this much knowledge, but I'm kind of excited by it. If we can get a coalition, it might be something that we can lobby for together. So I'll call you.
Okay. Dave, has Mercy got their bid in?
Yes.
Dave, do you mind, just because we might be live on YouTube right now?
Their bid is in, and we were a little bit behind. We were getting it all reviewed, and I think we ran up and weren't quite all reviewed yet.
Yeah,
I was just questioning whether
and
it's
so we should have it in a couple weeks.
right. Just so you know, originally that was an item that was submitted for today's agenda, and I wanted to make sure that we had, as we had alluded to, time for budget analysts to take a set of eyes and look, as well as Ed, and really do some due diligence before having them come in. So.
Yeah, I think that's, once these two get a chance to look it over, I think it'll be good. Give me a couple weeks. I'm going to take some vacation. Much needed, Larry, vacation. Thank you, sir.
I didn't know you got one, Dave, so
Thank you.
All right, if there's nothing else for the good of the cause, let's adjourn. Thank you, Diane. Oh,